Okay, seriously, why are there like two driving schools literally right next to each other? There's like three of these, okay? It makes no sense. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm back here, okay? About a week and a half ago, I made a video about like this crazy Giza pyramid conspiracy. So for anybody that doesn't know right now, this is the Giza pyramids, okay? Like the three pyramids of Giza. And recently there has been a bit of a conspiracy, a new finding potentially, that maybe, just maybe, there's an underground city far below that may lead to an actual super ancient civilization. Now, what is the evidence for this, ladies and gentlemen? Well, the evidence for this is a group of researchers who have published some of their crazy findings. And crazy indeed, because if this is true, this could absolutely shake up the entirety of history as we know it. Egyptology could be in question. Now, since then, I've been basically seeing a bunch of TikToks constantly posting shit like this. And you might be like, whoa, Muda, this is crazy. Did we actually go into the bottom of these pyramids and find some crazy stuff like this? No, ladies and gentlemen, we did not, okay? If you're looking very carefully at this is what we call AI-generated video, all right? And it's gotten so good to the point that I wouldn't be surprised if somebody, most notably an elder person in your family, probably saw it down, and maybe if they saw like 3 seconds of this, they were like, whoa, this might actually be real. But it really isn't. No scientists went this deep into it. In fact, if you look very closely into any of these AI videos, I'm sure you'll find a lot of things that just don't make any sense. For instance, why did the ancient people that created this not realize that basic symmetry hasn't matched? Why did these pillars look really fucked up and out of place and not symmetrical at all? I would have a lot to question from an elder civilization. Although I do have to ask, when the hell did the ancient civilization put recessed lighting into the pyramids? But you know what? Obviously, all of this is a joke aside. I wanted to dig even deeper into this and find out exactly what was going on. So, according to the Tribune, the Express Tribune, I believe this is a Pakistani newspaper, another development in Giza pyramid mystery, new evidence could reshape history as we know it. So the Italian researchers claim that this structure suggests a lost civilization existed 38,000 years ago. Now, most archaeologists believe that 38,000 years ago, human beings were basically dwelling in we were cavemen back then, if anything. So nobody really expected there to be crazy prehistoric civilizations. Now, obviously, I wanted to go down into it and read exactly why they started saying shit like this. So the researchers told the Daily Mail that the Giza pyramid, the complex of pyramids, widely thought to be around 4,500 years old, you know, by most archaeologists, was actually built 38,000 years ago. The shafts and chambers they identified below ground are said to be a similar age. Really? You can tell that from the technology they were using, the SAR microwave, like, Dopplers? Really? I didn't know they could get age from that, but okay. In an even wilder claim, they said the people who built the pyramids were destroyed around 12,000 years ago by a divine flood triggered by an asteroid pact. Now, I don't know what the fucking asteroid pact is, but I do know that asteroids were responsible for killing dinosaurs, okay? Were they responsible for killing an ancient civilization? I'm not entirely sure. According to the theory, the pyramids were the only megastructure to survive the extinction event, okay? So a lot of bold claims are being made, okay? And there needs to be a lot of corrections. And let me tell you about corrections, okay? I made a statement in my last video about the Giza pyramids, which didn't appear to be all that good, okay? It didn't appear to be all that right, and so I'm gonna correct the record just for my audience. Last time I said that slaves were the ones responsible for building the pyramids, and the audience in the comment sections did correct me, which is why I researched for this video, and it turns out, no, the workers who were building the pyramids were not, in fact, traditional slaves. Some of them may have been, slaves if you were, under a prison contract. But then again, have times really changed since then, to be honest? No, a lot of these people were skilled laborers, people who were actually paid for their work, and of course, conscripts who may or may not have been possibly forced into it. But there is actually some archaeological evidence. For instance, if you're looking at this right over here, this is the Wadi al-Jarf papyrus. Now, this is probably just hieroglyphics to you, but some of this does actually contain what I believe to be the diary of one of the overseers involved into it. So at least it serves as a way to show people that there was some planning, there was some actual, like, understanding of, hey, this is how we're going to get these things built. This is not just slave labor we're going in with. We got like food records. We've got apparently what appears to be like villages for these people, complex systems. It is, in fact, what appears to be just one of the oldest construction jobs. So I couldn't dig up a pay stub for you guys, but what I showed you may be the closest thing to like a pay stub you could see, okay? Or at least some understanding of the modernities of building a giant fucking triangle that's supposed to house the dead in, okay? So on like conspiracy side of YouTube, there's a video that I found like 4 days ago, like 118 views, okay? Now this is, again, this is a side of YouTube where like you really have to dig into the trenches to find stuff. But first things first, I wanted to uncover if this was actually like filmed anywhere. Like, was this an actual area that we could have gone to just to understand, like, was this ever actually presented, right? That's the question that I had to ask. So one of the things I wanted to ask, obviously, to myself when researching this, right? In the last video, I did pull up an actual, like, report, it seems, of the actual research here. And that report wasn't exactly peer-reviewed, meaning that nobody could confirm if the methodologies used by these people to uncover these underground, like, structures were actually real. But it turns out, according to, people researching this, according to the actual presentation, one of the things I wanted to know is, did these researchers present these findings? So apparently on March 15th to the 16th, there was at the Artemide Congress Center in Bologna, Italy, however it's pronounced, please correct me if I'm wrong, there was an event titled Giza, la Piramidi e la Porta del Tempo, where basically you had the three doctors, so you had Corrado Malanga, which, yes, that sounds like it's from The Sopranos, and I know people question me about it. I want to mention that reference for the meme here. You had Filippo Biondi, okay, these were people that we saw in a previous report as well. And you also had Armando May, and they discussed that they used this synthetic aperture radar technology to investigate these, underground Giza complexes. And so when you actually look at people researching into the video, you can see that it's apparently actually being presented. And of course, they've got all of their slides and photographs to present this, right? So this actually appears to be something that has happened. And of course, this is multiple hours of breakdown of, again, findings that have been presented by these individuals, by these doctors. So for me, I'm looking at it from the outside. I'm like, all right, you got people who've got reputations. They put them out on the line. And of course, when you read some of their actual paperwork, and some of their paperwork came from like, a while back, for instance. Yeah, from Filippo Biondi and Corrado Malanga, you actually had this first article that they pulled up. And of course, the further I looked into this article, again, when you just give it a quick understanding, you can see that obviously people were kind of questioning it, this even just a little bit back from 2022, when they started to even say, in studying the origins of the pyramids, we believe we should not overlook the existence of ancient mythological writings, a study concerning the myths and folklore of the ancient people of the world. Highlighting all the similarities between them was made in the arguments that myths are insignificant or often mere stories passed on through generations has been challenged. So we're kind of involving mythology into what appears to be actual science, which, generally speaking, never really works all that well, especially in all this, right? And of course, the actual, official press release that I was able to find through some of these more fringe websites led me to this thing, where they had the Khafre project, where they started to look, and this is where a lot of those original images that we saw ended up coming out. Those underground sort of structures that people were sharing all over social media, like stuff like this. So immediately I'm like, I'm not crazy, right? I can't be crazy. There's got to be some truth to this. So I started to check the scientific methodologies involved, which was something known as SAR. Okay, so SAR, let's redeem what the fuck this actually is synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography. So generally speaking, the idea here is you want to penetrate underground structures. And the thing about it is there's actually use cases for this. It's not crazy technology. It has been used for valid things like earthquake detection, things like structural engineering. But the problem is SAR doesn't go to the depths that typically we're looking at for these structural pyramids, right? Standard SAR apparently cannot reach more than a few centimeters into something dense like stone. Remember, stone is a pretty dense, it's a pretty dense material, as is limestone, as is a lot of dense materials in general. I guess the best technological like comparison that I can make that makes sense is kind of like look at Wi-Fi or something, right? Or Bluetooth or any wireless signal on your phone. Generally, when you're looking at things like drywall, right, you might be able to bypass this between rooms with relative ease. But when you start adding in concrete and you start adding in more thicker materials, that wireless signal becomes, a lot more difficult to penetrate the more thicker the material ends up becoming. And there are some materials where certain signals just cannot bypass whatsoever, right? Even though you think that technically they should be able to. And I guess the same could be applied for something like SAR, right? So the technology these people are bringing up, because it wasn't peer-reviewed, obviously everyone has a pretty big problem with it, right? Like a pretty big issue. And again, for these like professors and doctors to be insinuating that they can, I guess now detail the age of some of these locations has me wondering too, because nothing out of SAR I was able to even research or understand for this video, and I've researched a fair bit, has shown me that nothing can actually just determine like the age of something too. That just makes no sense to me. So according to a Professor Lawrence Conyers, a radar expert at the University of Denver, told the Daily Mail that they said these claims that the pyramids and structures that were built are outlandish, okay? So that's just one, expert sort of throwing their hat into the ring, okay? It's just outlandish. It makes no sense. Like, what I'm reading over here and why this is interesting to me in the first place is like, there's one of my favorite game franchises, Assassin's Creed. Like, if you look into the actual, story mode for that game and you play through some of the earlier stuff on the Xbox 360, the general crux of that game is that there is a society known as the Ones Who Came Before, as like an old world civilization, far more technologically advanced than where we're at now. And generally speaking, it feels like these scientists played Assassin's Creed 2, the Ezio trilogy, a lot of those early games, and were just like, oh my god, Ubisoft's cooking, all right? Maybe Ubisoft Montreal knows what's up. Maybe they know about the old society that we don't. And yeah, they're basically trying to prove a mythological society actually true in this regard. So what happened to the society back in the day? Obviously, they were apparently flooded, right? So Mae says that the notion that a civilization limited to rudimentary tools such as wooden mallets and copper chisels implements seemingly inadequate for such monumental tasks in hard stone could have achieved this level of engineering. Mastery demands a more robust and scientifically sound explanation than the often cited and frankly unconvincing theory of water-soaked wooden wedges. So this guy believes that there has to be something more technologically aligned. And there are actual, researchers, one we saw from the University of Miami where they were just like, no, there's actual proof you could build the pyramids with things that were a lot inferior to the technology of today. So what I do kind of like about at least the viewers for this kind of slop will at least say, for instance, this one user is like utter garbage. Okay, this is actually utter garbage. Aliens told you a wacko conspiracy theory until it ain't. And one commenter actually did say something that raised some more awareness to me. Not like the Egyptian government would ever give permission for any kind of excavations, but this is very fascinating. Hopefully one day the truth will come out where the pyramids came from. So for a lot of people who think the pyramids are not just tombs, but they're like, alien contact satellite devices or whatever the fuck the conspiracies are nowadays, it's interesting that they bring up the Egyptian government into it, because this actually has a pretty strong reason as to why this conspiracy holds, or a lot of this stuff is covered in this insane mystique. Because there is one controversial figure in the entirety of Egyptology that actually kind of ruins it for everybody in some fashion. So when it came to one doctor, Zahi Hawass, a former minister of antiquities, Egypt's former minister of antiquities, said that flooding or water erosion was actually just a simple sign of natural weathering, which makes sense. Obviously, I'm not an expert, but I can understand what weathering does. It's a pretty powerful force, usually just deteriorates shit down to its bone. But the thing is, Dr. Zahi Hawass is the one guy that you probably don't want to be aligned with when it comes to having any conspiracy issued towards you. So again, Dr. Zahi Hawass has a pretty long career, and this guy is apparently supposed to be the top dog, the chief when it comes to Egyptology. I mean, if anything goes through, it is usually him being involved in the driver's seat of basically any discovery in this situation. So basically what happened was he was one of the longest running heads for something known as the Supreme Council of Antiquities, which basically allowed him to have this massive influence on archaeological sites and just the overall research of the field of Egyptology. And again, the massive history, again, regarding ancient Egyptian culture. One of the oldest human histories, one of the oldest human cultures in history in general, right? So a lot of the critics in the community for archaeology, the drama here is that this guy is effectively monopolizing Egyptology, right? Like he's basically just the one that controls it with an iron fist. And a lot of these controversies do end up going back all the way to like 2002 up to 2024. Like this is long running for this man. So in one of the oldest pieces of like research papers I could find by Zevin El Aref, where they were talking about this guy, Zahi Hawass, a hat is a hat. The walls of Zahi Hawass's office are covered with photographs, a great many of them, its occupant. There he is in jeans, entering a narrow burial shaft in Saqqara and brushing sand from an exquisitely colored mummy. So people kind of look at him as like, oh, this is like the real life Indy Jones. You know, this is a real guy. He has been accused of being pro-American, amongst the evidence cited being the Indiana Jones hat, and his efforts to secure a law allowing the Tutankhamun exhibit to tour the U.S. for up to 2 years. Okay, so Hawass is ruling the SCA with an iron fist and a censorious tongue. Now, anytime I read the word censorious and, science together, it's generally not a good thing to see. So, of course, this is like one of the first times where people are looking at him a little bit. He's being accused of monopolizing basically the entire research field of Egyptology. And, of course, he basically said that, no, I don't care about all these other countries. I give a shit about me and Egypt first, okay? A little bit of nationalism to, like, sort of thwart the actual people watching. Then, of course, down the road in 2003, there was a British researcher, Joanne Fletcher, who actually claimed to have found the mummy of Nefertiti, all right? So this was in a 2003 television program. Hawass was like, this motherfucker is nuts, okay? They're crazy. And so for a while, they got banned for breaking the publication rules of the SCA. And at this moment in time, British scholars were just like, no, actually, we support our person. And of course, good old Hawass is like, nope, this person's a Looney Tune, okay? So again, down the road, it was actually lifted. The ban was lifted around 2008, but that wasn't just the end. So when the Arab Spring had started to happen in 2011, the revolution, a lot of the protesters started to label this guy, Zahi Hawass, as the Mubarak of antiquities. And he was being accused of corruption, nepotism, so this is where a lot of the controversy started showing up. And once the government was effectively ousted, he had effectively left, after 2011. And of course, after 2011, because, he had stepped down from this prestigious position, there was just a lot of court cases, a lot of legal issues that he ended up actually coming into contact with, because, of course, all the walls around him started to collapse. It's great when you're kind of propped up by government forces that will oftentimes keep any form of investigation at bay, but once those are gone, you bet that the hammer is coming down on every single person that was up there with the government elite. And of course, one of the things that ended up coming out and being researched into was an actual yearly contract he had with National Geographic. So literally, this is written in the Smithsonian Magazine. So again, Hawass is still fighting legal problems that ensnared him during the revolution. But of course, going down into it, Hawass stands accused of wasting public money and exposing Egyptian antiquities to possible theft by shipping them overseas without permission, which, again, would be pretty important to, again, Egyptian people, right? I mean, this is your history at the end of the day. This is your, beyond just culture, this is what makes your country a special, country in the world. And if somebody's just sending things out willy-nilly without permission, that should be a pretty serious crime, in my opinion. He gave up his National Geographic contract, an arrangement that paid him $200,000 a year. Like, to give you an idea, 200 grand, especially, I mean, even now, is not a tiny sum of money, okay? $200,000 is a good chunk of change, especially when you're dealing with a pretty large media company, which, again, led people to kind of question, like, is there a possible conflict of interest, right? Like, hey, if you're administering all these sites that National Geographic is then using for their, television programs and whatnot, or their specials, it's like, are you in it for the love of archaeology, or are you in it for the love of the money, right? Which, generally speaking, it seems like from all this, it might have been more of the money, if anything. And of course, it ends up going out of the way too, because after a while, right, like it came to a German pyramid, scandal where effectively Germans had taken these illegal paint fragments, and of course, 5 Egyptian officials were convicted for aiding and abetting them. And those officials alleged that Hawass basically allowed earlier access anyways, right? So more controversy started to get raised because people were looking at him with this new light. So anyways, the person who's making one of the biggest sort of stinks about this, right? Basically decrying this underground Giza pyramid conspiracy is somebody that is also mired in a lot of controversies, which the whole point of why I'm saying this is that generally speaking, when it comes to these conspiracies, the biggest fuel to the fire is when, you've got one person making an outlandish claim, but the other guy correcting your claim is covered in so much controversy so that side A, who believes this, will immediately try to discredit what side B says. Now, I'm not saying that Zahi Hawass is wrong here. He might actually be 100% right, because remember, a broken clock is right, twice a day? But because this guy has so much stink on him, it gives so much fuel to the fringe side for saying, yeah, why would you believe him? The guy has his own shit. This guy has his own skeletons in the closet. Why even bother listening? At the end of all this, everything that I've researched has shown me that these pyramids are effectively just pyramids that, if you look beyond the actual research, if you look at the research papers, you actually read things for yourself, as I have, a lot of their findings become pretty, I guess you could say, nonsensical. The fact that none of their reported technologies have actually been proven to reach those depths is already the first red flag. They haven't really provided any examples of how their specific variant of SAR technology reaches that depth, which again is another red flag. And then, of course, the big red flag is the lack of non-peer review. Unless other scientists who don't really have skin in the game also come in and verify this, you should not be taking these things as fringe facts and realities. But that's what I love about these kind of conspiracies, man, and covering them, because honestly, it's the lowest stakes. It's like, it doesn't really affect anyone at the end of the day. We can laugh about it, we can read about it. It's just interesting stuff. If I am totally wrong about this and there is like a old civilization, the happiest person would be me. I'd be so happy to make that correction video, because at least at that point, some new interesting shit will come out. But I guess to make things interesting, to end you off with, there's a lot of clickbait these days that'll just have you shocked. For instance, I read this article the other day. Shape-shifting aliens massacred soldiers with explosive energy burst, CIA report claims. So, you read something like this and you think, whoa, that's crazy. There's no way that's real, Muda. That's wild. So I actually pulled up the CIA report, and no, it's not in fact a CIA report. This is the CIA cataloging a Canadian news site where they talk about literally this. The file contains many documentary photographs and drawings, but also testimonies by actual participants in the events. One of the CIA representatives referred to this case as a horrific picture of revenge on the part of extraterrestrial creatures. A picture that makes one's blood freeze. According to the KGB materials, a quite low-flying spaceship in the shape of a saucer appeared above a military unit that was conducting routine training maneuvers. For unknown reasons, someone unexpectedly launched a surface-to-air missile and hit the UFO. It fell to Earth, not far away, and 5 short humanoids with large heads and large black fucking A's came out. It is stated in these testimonies by the 2 soldiers who remained alive that, after freezing themselves from the debris, the aliens came close together and then merged into a single object that acquired a spherical shape. That object began to buzz and hiss sharply and then became brilliant white. In a few seconds, the spheres grew much bigger and exploded by flaring up with an extremely bright light. Yeah, the aliens just fucking flashbanged you to death. Crazy shit. Now, of course, none of this is an actual CIA report. It's just the CIA looking through the Canadian Weekly News and writing it up. That's it. So again, sometimes you just have to look at the facts for what they really are instead of just fucking believing what the internet tells you. But sometimes when I look into the conspiracies like this, the bigger story is always looking at the fucking drama that happens between archaeologists, bro. Like, Jesus Christ. Every single professional field has to have like an element of TMZ in it. And sometimes it just takes a fat Indian guy to parse through all of that crap. So yes, None of this has been proven. You don't have to worry about some crazy 30,000-year-old society yet. Until, of course, it actually exists, and hopefully I get proven wrong. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.